Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend. I'm Jason Godbey, and today on the program, we got some more movie reviews for you. And to help me do that, joining me via Zoom, he's our man in Hollywood and the man behind actuallypaid.com, Mr. William Hammon. Welcome.
Hey, hey.
It's good to see you again. We just did this a little bit ago, but we have so many movies to catch up on. So I figured that it would be good to give people some streaming recommendations, maybe some stuff they missed in the theater this summer. But let's get into it. We got movies, and more movies to discuss. What was another standout for you this summer?
We're going to start off with what was billed as going to be like the biggest horror movie of the year, the greatest thing since Silence of the Lambs. We're going to talk about Longlegs, directed by Oz Perkins, the son of the late, great Anthony Perkins, Norman Bates himself. Yeah, there's a little bit of a plot framing similarity between this and Silence of the Lambs. You have Micah Monroe playing Lee Harker, a young FBI agent who's called in on this, massive string of serial murder-suicides that have plagued the Portland rural areas in Oregon since the 70s. And there's this whole thing about like satanic cults and Zodiac-style coding and messages where all the murders and all the suicides are tied to this devil worshiper called Longlegs, played by Nicolas Cage. There's a lot of fun ways that they connect the scenes to each other. The editing is really well done in this, like, standout achievement as far as that is concerned. I think it should get Academy consideration just for that. It's the whole thing where she's trying to piece together how all these murders happen, and of course, she herself might be connected to them in ways she doesn't realize, given her own past, given her ultra-religious mother, played by Alicia Witt, who's a veteran of the horror genre. Watching the actual chase, for lack of a better term, that's a lot of fun. Watching Nicolas Cage continue to earn that Lifetime Achievement Award we gave him earlier this year. I just absolutely love, first of all, the makeup job that's done on him. He's so pasty and ghoulish and weird looking that one of the best scenes is that he's just walking around in a hardware store picking up supplies and weirdly flirting with the clerk, and it's just creepy as all hell, but it's in a way that only Cage can pull it off. Anywhere else you would think this was like a Tommy Wiseau performance, but here it's just pure distilled Cage. There's scratching of the surface when it comes to the actual motives behind all these deaths. This whole idea of damnation being masked in the salvation of the church. I wish it would have been explored a little bit more. I wish there was a little bit more grounding in reality rather than, blaming it on the occult. But for the most part, it's really well made and really well done. I don't think it's to the level of Silence of the Lambs because Micah Monroe, she plays Lee Harker well, but she's not Clarice Starling. She's just not. Clarice is put into the situation, and then she does the work. She forms the rapport with Hannibal Lecter to get to this end solution where she goes after Buffalo Bill. Whereas with Harker, a lot of the stuff happens to and around her rather than her initiating. She's not given as much agency as Starling was. And as fun as Cage is as Longlegs, you're never going to get to Anthony Hopkins level. But for what it is, I was pleasantly surprised at how funny it was. There are some legitimate thrills in it and very few jump scares, which is always a plus in my book.
I was going to ask you, does he go full Cage?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. If you want to see Cage just doing the kind of crazy that only he can do, yeah, this is probably the best example in a good long while.
Yeah, I've also heard it's pretty scary. Like, it's genuinely scary.
There are some truly disturbing moments. I don't know if I was ever actually scared or truly worried, because again, the tension is rooted in satanic ritual rather than anything that could be grounded in reality. So that kind of, I can only suspend my disbelief so far. But again, for what it is, it works to tremendous effect. And you can see how far the apple fell from the tree with Oz Perkins. Again, Norman Bates' son helming this project, and you can see those little nods to Hitchcock and to his father's work peppered throughout here. Never being truly derivative, just saying, I know where my bread's buttered, I know where I came from, I'm not going to pretend I don't.
All right, so I want to move on to a film that we both saw. I saw it pretty recently on streaming. You saw it in the theater. Furiosa. It's a prequel to Mad Max Fury Road, which is one of my favorite films of all time. Certainly one of my favorite films of this century. Why don't you give us a little plot synopsis of Furiosa?
Furiosa, I mean, it's right there in the title. Like, this is the saga of how the surprise breakthrough badass played by Charlize Theron in Fury Road became who she was. This truly is an origin story, starting with her as a child, growing up in one of the few, you know, what do they call it? A place of
a place of abundance.
Yeah, you know, all the way up until she, you know, falls in with the Citadel and Immortan Joe, how she loses her arm, how she learns to drive the Fury Road. It is a traditional origin story. It's not as bombastic as Fury Road, and there's a little bit too much reliance on digital effects, whereas Fury Road was mostly done with a strong balance and even favoritism toward practical. But I still thoroughly enjoyed it, especially Chris Hemsworth as Dementis. Oh my God, he was a lot of fun. You see this guy play Thor for over a decade. You're used to seeing him play, you know, heroes and heartthrobs. So to see him be this vainglorious, insane, self-described messianic figure is just a delight. Just to see him go so far against type and lean into every second of it, I just loved.
He was impressive. I thought performances all the way around were really good. I don't have anything against Anya Taylor-Joy, but I just don't think she's Charlize Theron. Like, Charlize Theron in Fury Road is special, and I don't know that this performance kind of matches up to that performance. And of course, it's George Miller. It's like a really well-made movie. The part that got me were the action scenes. When the action kicks in, when she's like underneath that truck, even as a kid, when they go to the bullet farm and Gas Town, the paragliders and all. I mean, like, George Miller's really taking this to a new level. And, you know, he's like a grandpa. He's like 75 years old. And he was a doctor. He was like a for real, like, medical doctor before he even became a director. Like, this guy has had multiple lives. But I don't know. I think you're kind of tempting fate when you do a prequel to something like this. And my question is, did we need this movie?
Hard to say, though, since you mentioned that he was a doctor, now I'm kind of fantasizing about a world where he and Ken Jeong do a show called Diagnosing Movies, because they're both former medical professionals. I do love Anya Taylor-Joy. She's one of my favorite actresses. And, you know, she's a goddess who walks this earth. I would swim through sulfuric acid for one date with her. I don't care.
What struck me was I'm just now able to sort of put it into words, is I felt like we were watching Anya Taylor-Joy cosplay Furiosa, like, especially at the end.
Yes and no. I mean, it wasn't needed from the pure standpoint of, unless we're going to continue doing sequels with this character, we really don't need to know her backstory. We just know that she is awesome, and that's good enough. But I'll give Miller credit. He wrote a screenplay's worth of backstory for the character when he was pitching it to Charlize Theron over a decade ago. So the material was already there. So given the audience response to the character, given how long this was in development held, because he was insisting that we tell the story right, I'm certainly more than okay with what we got. Because this was more of a triumph of the auteur over the studio. The fact that this had to get shopped around and so many different hands had a, you know, their fingers in the proverbial soup. It's like, no, he wrote this story. He created this character. He created a whole universe around her. so that if she became a fan favorite, which she did, then he can pay that off. So this wasn't something hastily thrown together as a cash grab. I mean, Fury Road was 10 years ago. So in that respect, was it needed? No. Is it appreciated? Yes.
I don't know. I thought it was not bad. I felt like it was a little bit long, and at one point I thought we were going to see this child grow up in like real time. I know people just wanted more of this story. I don't know where we go from here with Mad Max, or if we go anywhere at all. Like, do we want to see another Tom Hardy Mad Max movie with whatever accent he's decided to do, and grunting? Like, are we? Because it wouldn't make sense for Charlize Theron, that character, to be in a next Mad Max. So, like, if we didn't do this, what will we do? But anyway, we're going to move on to a more recent film, Beetlejuice 2. And I just want to refresh people's memory because the original Beetlejuice, the first Beetlejuice, happened back in 1988. It's the story of a deceased couple, a newly deceased couple, played by Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis, at the height of their collective beautifulness. I think they died in a car accident, and they are sort of doomed to haunt their country home. They are harassed by this awful family from the city that moves in, and so they try to drive them out, but they have to hire this creature Beetlejuice to get them out, and of course it backfires on them, and their whole lives change. Everything goes upside down, and now we're coming back to that, revisiting it. Bill, why don't you give us the plot of BeetleJuice BeetleJuice?
Yes. Plot. I shouldn't say that. There is a story. It's just kind of threadbare and very by the numbers. So, now we're 35 years later. Lydia Dietz is the host of a Ghost Hunters type show, and she's dating her producer, who's a complete fraud and a manipulator. He's a discount oath, though. He's played by Justin Theroux. She's kind of estranged from her daughter, Astrid, played by Jenna Ortega. And as the film is set in motion, her father, Charles, who was previously played by Jeffrey Jones, has died. Not to spoil anything, but they have a lot of fun with Charles's death. I will, given what we know now about Jeffrey Jones, obviously he wasn't going to be brought back for this. So the way they handle him is a lot of fun. I will grant that. Meanwhile, Beetlejuice has somehow created a whole thriving business out of his bioexorcism, to the point where he runs a full office full of these shrunken head zombies. His ex-wife, Dolores, played by Monica Bellucci, escapes from whatever boxes her severed, dismembered parts were in. She staples herself back together, and she's a soul-sucking witch, literally, who is now hunting for him. So he's still stalking Lydia 35 years later to try to get back to the real world. Dolores is hunting him down, trying to devour his soul, which I guess is another form of death for the dead apart from exorcism. I have in my closet somewhere an actual handbook for the recently deceased. It's just a journal that you write, and it's completely blank. So in my mind, it was written by agnostics. But it's this. There's basically these two parallel stories going on, where Lydia is trying to deal with her father's death, being roped into a quickie marriage to this Rory character, and dealing with her daughter, who just hates her because something generational trauma something. While of course she's off, Jenna Ortega, she's off, just being mopey, and oh look, there's a cute boy. Let's derail the plot for this. And it's hard to parse this movie, because you see a lot of the hallmarks of what made the original great. There are some really fun ideas, really funny depictions of death. The neither world, for lack of a better term, I know that was just used for the cartoon and not in the movies, but I stick with that. It's still very creative, but part of what made the original movie so great is that you had Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis as the straight men to counterbalance all this, and you really don't have that character this time around. In fact, Adam and Barbara Maitland are literally just waved off with one line for them not being there, and it's cringeworthy how easily it's dismissed. Whereas you could take a risk with Lydia back in 1988 to basically make her, resent her stepmother, but not actively hate her, and have a good relationship with her father, but still be gothy, emo, and even suicidal because she just doesn't feel like a normal person. We don't have that with Astrid. Jenna Ortega is a fine actress, but she's terrible in this because she's given nothing to work with. She's there because they want the audience to say, "Oh, I remember her. She's in Wednesday. Let's go watch that on Netflix after we're done here." And part of it, I think, is because back in '88, Winona Ryder was just starting out, and she was 16 when this movie came out. She was an actual teenager. So you could actually buy her as any random girl you would meet on the street. You had this girl in your school. Maybe exaggerated, but you knew someone like her. Whereas Astrid is, Jenna Ortega is going to be 22 in a couple of weeks. And we've watched her on TV and film for more than a decade. We've watched her literally grow up into an adult. So we can't really buy her as a teenager, even though it's not that big of an age difference. We really can't buy it. You see a real teenager in Winona Ryder in 1988, and you see an actress pretending to be a teenager with Jenna Ortega. And again, there's nothing really to explain her mopiness other than rebelling teenager trope. Everything is my parents' fault. I'm perfect. I have no flaws. The whole movie is about everybody coming to accept me rather than me taking a journey. And that's just not what this film, this series now, I guess, and Tim Burton is supposed to be about. It's like the reason we love BeetleJuice so much, the reason it's a timeless classic is because it was completely unexpected. You had no idea what was going to happen from one scene to the next. The Deo scene is a timeless comedy miracle. It is one of the greatest scenes in cinema history because you had no idea it was coming. The only clue you got was the fact that there's other Harry Belafonte tracks playing in the background in a few scenes. And then, Alec Baldwin says, "Hey, I've got a plan." He doesn't tell you what the plan is. It just happens. Here, the film opens with a kind of a recreation of the overhead drone shots of the miniatures, only now it's like enhanced by storm effects because more technology. And they're playing MacArthur Park. Well, I already know what song they're going to use to try to one up the Deo scene. Is like, and that's the core problem here. The biggest sin this movie commits is that it is entirely predictable. Nearly every story and character beat I could pin down within 5 minutes. And that just shouldn't happen. Part of the conflict between Astrid and Lydia is that, her ex-husband / Astrid's father is dead, and Lydia can't see her ghost. The ghost never comes to visit or whatever, so she thinks Lydia's a fraud. Well, it's like, no, your own rules establish this. Why could Lydia see Adam and Barbara? It's right there in the handbook. Living people often ignore the strange and unusual. I myself am strange and unusual. Astrid is almost aggressively ordinary. She's a cardboard cutout made from studio notes. From the moment she, meets up with Arthur Conti as Jeremy, oh, look, cute boy, every single place this is going to go. Now, and it's just so frustrating, but I will say this. I still enjoyed myself on a base level. Catherine O'Hara steals every goddamn scene she's in. She is just a marvel and keeps proving why she's one of the greatest comedic forces of the last, 4 decades. Willem Dafoe has a really fun minor role as this dead actor who becomes a paranormal detective in the afterlife. Just like with Cage playing Longlegs, Willem Dafoe in this role, it's just pure distilled Dafoe. Michael Keaton absolutely thrives in every second. Like it really is as if there was no time between the movies. Like Beetlejuice is still Beetlejuice to his core, and his manic energy is what sells a lot of the great moments. There are some jokes that don't work. Like there's a Soul Train, which just makes you wonder, well, what did they do before the show? And a lot of the more ribald humor is taken out because a 1988 PG is way harsher than a 2024 PG-13 movie, evidenced by the fact that this is just one of those minor things that irks me. I'm not gonna swear, but there's a moment where Michael Keaton drops an F-bomb. It's a great moment. And then a few scenes later, he drops another one, but because you only get one in a PG-13 movie, they bleeped the second one. I was like, you're playing it too safe. If this is the line to say what was once PG is now R, take the damn R, Tim.
My favorite Tim Burton is early Tim Burton. I thought he made some really great work. When you look at Ed Wood, Edward Scissorhands, Beetlejuice, those are, to me, the sort of the quintessential core drives of Tim Burton movies. And I'll definitely see this movie just because I'm curious and I'm still in love with Winona Ryder for 30 years. But like, yeah, again, my same question. Do we need this film?
This one I can decidedly say no, especially because there are so many avenues where Tim Burton of 30 years ago would have gone down them in a heartbeat. The fact that Lydia has quote unquote sold out and got famous hosting this ghost hunter show in the 80s and early 90s, Tim Burton would have made an entire movie out of how she became a ghost hunter, whether she's faking it, whether the whole thing is BS, which it is, and all that fun stuff. He would have had a field day with that. There's an early scene where Delia, when she learns of Charles's death, has to cancel an art installation that she was doing, and the collaborator she was working with gets really ticked off, and he storms out of the gallery and immediately falls down a manhole to his death. It's a funny scene. And then he shows up in the waiting room having no idea what to do because there's a language barrier. He only speaks French. I was like, that should have been a running gag throughout the entire movie. It's abandoned after 5 minutes. There's this Danny DeVito has a cameo as a janitor in the afterlife, and he's framed in the first of his two scenes as if it's this like big reveal, like, oh my god, we're gonna see somebody important. Like, it's Danny DeVito. He's shot from the back. We know what Danny DeVito looks like. His physical appearance has not changed in 50 years. Just the amount of hair on his head. It's like, even from the back, we know exactly who it is. So why are you treating this as if it's this huge moment? Especially when you're just going to unceremoniously get rid of him in the next scene. So it's like, it's like Tim Burton had a really good idea for where he wanted to go with this. And rather than fight the powers that be, he was just like, you know what, whatever, do what you want, so I can get a hit for once. Because, I mean, the last movie he did was the god-awful Dumbo remake. I mean, Rotten Tomatoes pointed this out yesterday because it crept over the line 75% to get certified fresh. It's at 76 as we're recording this. And that's his first certified fresh film since Frankenweenie. Big Eyes got close. It got to 72. And I love Big Eyes. That to me was his last great movie. And I think it's underappreciated. But to go 12 years without any real critical success, I think he's just like, I want to see what I can do with these characters again, but I'm willing to compromise whatever it takes to basically get it to a point of success. And, it won the weekend box office. It'll probably, win another one, but it feels oddly soulless. And for this universe in particular, that feels like a sin. But again, it's still good enough. Like, you could still sit there eat your popcorn out of your bob shaped bucket and enjoy yourself. But it's a good, competent film. It's a terrible follow-up to Beetlejuice.
We're gonna put that on the poster. It's good enough. Bill Hammon. Anyway, I gotta wrap up, man. But for people who want to check out your stuff, read your reviews, where can they find you online?
All right, the blog is actuallypaid.com. The Twitter, X, whatever the hell you want to call it, terrible Elon Musk platform is at actually_paid, as is the YouTube channel. And my reviews are also repurposed onto Medium.
And that's all we got for you today. Thanks so much for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. For more of our content, including more movie reviews, visit our website, norestfortheweekendpodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube, youtube.com/getbehindtherabbit. I'd like to thank Bill Hammon, and for Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
This is the BTRP Media Network.